I'm Dave Greenwood, and this is Overcoming Distractions. If you are an adult with ADHD, a busy professional, an entrepreneur, a high achiever, or you just need some strategies to navigate your adult ADHD, you are in the right place. Who am I? I'm an entrepreneur with ADHD and the author of 2 books, Overcoming Distractions and Overcoming Burnout. I've worked with hundreds of people just like you, and together we navigate the ups and downs of adult ADHD. Want more info on working with me? Hit overcomingdistractions.com. Ready? Let's get to today's podcast. All right, gang, we're back. It's Overcoming Distractions. You know who you are. It is the place for the distracted, busy professional. Whether you have ADHD, you think you have ADHD, you've been thinking about it for a while. I don't care. You don't have to have an official diagnosis here. You're all welcome. You got kids in school, you got kids in college, you're just running a crazy business. This is the place for you. So, one of the challenges I think many of us busy adults with ADHD have, it's that to-do lists, it's that task manager. If you're like many people, ADHD, you've tried all kinds of ways to keep track of work, projects, tasks, everything at home. You've tried paper, Post-its, legal pads, all kinds of apps. Maybe it's all in your head. You know who you are, right? And maybe you just keep trying. Maybe you've tried like 10 things at once. I know there's a lot of you out there that are trying like 10 different types of like task management systems, and I'm sure our guest is going to agree that that probably doesn't work, but we're going to get into that in a second. So, but today we're going to talk about to-do lists, effective task management strategies, entrepreneurial success with ADHD, and more. And you're speaking my language there, because this whole Overcoming Distractions thing was founded about entrepreneurs with ADHD. So my guest is Marie Ung, founder of Llama Life, which is a to-do list, get stuff done, task management app. It's designed for those of us with ADHD. Maybe some of you that don't have ADHD are using it. And she's an entrepreneur with ADHD. Did I get everything right?
You did. Yeah, that was perfect. Hey, everyone, Marie here. Yeah, that was a perfect introduction. You got my name pronounced correctly too. It's a super difficult one because my last name's only got 2 letters in it, but you said it perfectly. And yeah, excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
I had noticed, I don't want to dime anybody out, and maybe it was just the way it was edited, so correct me if I'm wrong. But now my father was worked in government. You can kind of think about the kind of the household I grew up in. So I didn't get some of those ADHD things that, like I always tell people, I'm never late, and they're like, well, you don't have ADHD then. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I grew up in a house that there was certain things that were buttoned up, but I like to get things right. But I watched a couple interviews that you did, and a lot of them said, hey, it's Marie from Llama Life. Now, did some of these just say, I can't pronounce it, so we're just going with Marie, or or was it the edit?
I have no idea. Possibly. It's very scary because there's no vowels
Yeah.
in my last name. But yeah, no, you got it. You got it perfectly. And I think you introduced Llama Life perfectly as well. So yeah, it's a productivity app. And like you said, it's specifically designed for people with ADHD to help get through daily tasks and routines. And as someone with ADHD, one of the biggest challenges I have is I have massive time blindness. Like it's just so hard for me to figure out where I am during the day and how much time has passed. And I also just struggle to do one thing at a time. Like I think it's even worse nowadays with, phones and so many different screens, but I'm always multitasking when I really shouldn't. Like my brain just doesn't do multitasking very well. So Llama Life's designed to kind of solve those 2 big problems. And the way we do this is that for every task in your list, you can set a countdown timer against each task.
Hmm.
And it doesn't have to be a 25-minute timer, which is very kind of popular. You see that in a lot of apps. We let you set timers as little as 1 minute, 2 minutes. Like they can be very small amounts, and we make it very easy to like just quickly set that. So what that does is it helps you focus on one task at a time, because when you're doing that task, you start the timer, and that's all you're meant to do during that time. Just do this for 1 minute or do this for 2 minutes. And that seems a little bit more achievable to me than 5 minutes. And then the other thing we do for the time blindness aspect is we look at the whole list and we say, okay, well, you've put all these countdown timers. Um, do you realize you've actually got, 5 hours worth of things on this daily list? And if you start now, you're only going to finish at, 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. So we try and make time a little bit, excuse me, a little bit more visible, a little bit more sort of in your face, so you can see what's happening.
Yeah. And I think that there's two things you said there, and I want to get into this more um uh in a bit, but I think um the one thing that I think just destroys our productivity and even stresses us out is trying to do a million things at once.
Yeah.
It's like the common thread when um people come to me and say, "Hey, I gotta, I gotta sort something out. The way I'm working it isn't efficient." But I got to tell you, 9 times out of 10, it's that age-old ADHD thing where they show up to their desk in the morning and they go, "Okay, what am I going to work on?" Well, there's 30 things on the to-do list, and guess what happens?
Hmm.
Nothing,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
we just kind of spin our wheels. So I think
Yeah, it's
that's,
really, yeah,
but
exactly.
I use the, I mean, quite frankly, I use the Pomodoro method to write 2 books, and it was like building a muscle. But it was also,
Yeah.
I think it was almost like, gamifying the process, because it was like, oh, how many Pomodoros can I rack up today? And,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know, so,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and it worked. And again, you get on Twitter and some people go, "Oh, that's stupid. That doesn't work." But I don't think people give some of these techniques a real good, healthy try, right?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think the technique itself, or this concept of Pomodoro or setting a timer, that the concept for me works, and I think it works for a lot of people. I think what's needed is sort of just tweaking it to work for you. And that's why we say, well, you don't have to do a 25-minute timer,
Yeah.
because the Pomodoro method is really set around that. Like you said, how many Pomodoros, which is 25 minutes, can you do in a day? But for me, that's just really challenging. So I prefer to just do, okay, well, can I do 5 minutes?
Yeah.
And what that does is it does a couple of things. One is, if something's really hard to get started, I kind of think, well, I only have to do it for 5 minutes. I can do 5 minutes. Um, and I guess the reverse as well. Like if I don't want to do that task, I can also go, well, I only have to do it for 5 minutes. So it's a momentum thing for me, like to get started with something really like a short timer. And it's also like I can do that. I can do that. It's only
No,
for a short time.
no, and I think
Yeah.
science has proved that it is, we have the kind of motivation and doing things kind of backwards, like
Hmm.
typically in society where it's like, oh, I got to get motivated to go do the laundry.
Yeah.
The
Oh my
problem
gosh,
is,
don't get me started on laundry. It's
well,
my worst thing. Yeah.
I don't touch the laundry anymore because I've destroyed more clothes, so my wife does that. But it's the initial kind of like, you know, going to grab the laundry basket is
Hmm.
is then the motivator to continue to see that through. And like you say, the
Right.
example of
Hmm.
like, I just need to do this for 5 minutes. Now I'm gonna slowly kind of get in the zone. But
Yeah.
it's that stepping off the curb that
Gotcha.
we need
Yeah.
to get better at, right?
Yeah, the micro step to get started.
Yeah.
Just that little thing, like you said, just go grab the basket. And you might want to put a task in saying, grab the basket 1 minute. And I think for a lot of people who don't have ADHD, that might sound like a little ridiculous, but for those of us who do, like, yeah, that's kind of what all my tasks look like. They're so small. They're like, get out of bed 1 minute, go drink some water 1 minute. get dressed like 5 minutes. Some of these are, I even have a task like in between getting dressed and like making my coffee, which is just called like go downstairs, because so my bedroom's upstairs and the kitchen's downstairs. And I discovered that I was just losing a lot of time in between tasks. Like that's a really big thing for me. I might be okay like doing one task, but the context switching, I just lose time all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And so I actually had to have a task between like getting dressed and making coffee. And that task is literally just like go downstairs 2 minutes, and I start the timer. And like you said, there's a little bit, we don't really gamify it in terms of like, you can score points or anything like that, but it is gamified in the sense that like in my head, I'm like, can I do this before the timer gets down to zero? Like I need to get downstairs before it hits zero,
Mm-hmm.
and I can see it ticking down. So I'm like, all right, like time is passing. So I can see that because the time is moving. And otherwise, I wouldn't be able to really visualize that. And so I try and go downstairs, and we play sounds in the background as well to kind of remind you that the time is on. And also every now and again, it'll just like play a little chime in case you get distracted. So it'll be like, okay, well, actually, you're supposed to be doing this. So like get back to that task.
Yeah.
And that transition's super important to me because now it takes 2 minutes, whereas before I might get dressed and then I'll get on my phone, and then half an hour might pass and I'm like, oh my gosh, I am so late. Like I need to quickly go down, make coffee and start work. And I would just, that little thing that should take 2 minutes just suddenly took me half an hour because I got sucked into something on my phone.
Yeah.
And so now I've got that as part of my routine. It's actually a step in my routine to just walk down the stairs. That sounds very simple, but I need it. So I put it in. And that's the beauty of it. You can just, whatever you need, you just do what works best for you.
Yeah. And there's such a
Mm.
yin and the yang in terms of our mobile devices to these days, especially with
I
those of us
know
with
the
ADHD.
irony
That,
is not lost on me because we are a
right.
mobile app. So, that means you got to pick up your device, and there's a chance you could get distracted with something else as well. But the way I try and do it is like I'll have Llama Life open. Like I try not to close it. Like if I'm in the middle of a routine, I try not to close it because if I close it, there is a massive chance I will open another app, and
Yeah.
that's yeah, that could be the end of that. So
Hey gang, the podcast will be back in 30 seconds, but I wanted to make you aware of some of the very affordable programs I have on the website. They're all video programs, and if you're just getting into your adult ADHD journey, these resources can be a huge help. So all you need to do is go to overcomingdistractions.com, click on the ADHD resources, and I've got programs about ADHD in the workplace. I've got a Just Diagnosed with Adult ADHD video program, and the ever popular time management for busy adults with ADHD. So just hit overcomingdistractions.com, click on ADHD resources, and check those out. Let me shift gears a minute. I think you had said to me that you were diagnosed with ADHD as an adult, correct?
yeah,
Did
yeah.
you see uh did you see any signs of ADHD growing up or going to school or other things, or is it like looking back now you go, oh, that's why I did that? Or I mean, how did how did how did the younger years transpire into adulthood with ADHD?
Yeah, so many signs. It's kind of the classic, I think women get underdiagnosed. We kind of slip under the radar a lot as well. So I did really well at school, but to get to that point, I guess it was a struggle. Like even though my grades were good, it was always a last minute thing. There was always, staying up to midnight, handing in like reports like right before they were due. I remember once like this was university, but I remember I had to hand in like a massive assignment, and I was so late that I had to get my dad to actually drive me drive me into the university to physically hand it in to somebody because I wouldn't have made it if I had to mail it in. And this is kind of before this was like a master's thesis, so it was quite long, and you weren't allowed to just email it in. You had to like physically hand it in, and most people will just post it in, but I had to like drive in, and my dad had to drive so he could park. Otherwise, I would waste time parking and I would miss the deadline. It was just so last minute, but there was so many things like that, like just not being able to study. I remember my mom had to force me to go to the library because I just couldn't study at home, and I couldn't study at the library either. But she recognized that there was something because she would drop me off there and go like, "This is what you're doing. You're going to be at the library for 2 hours to study." So she was trying to create like a little time box, I guess,
Yeah,
around me to
right.
do one task, which is studying. Um, but even then, I just kind of sit there and walk around and walk around and look at books and like just super, super hard. But I think I kind of flew under the radar because my grades were okay, and my mom was just really good at putting structure around my day and saying, okay, you're doing this now, you're doing that now. But as soon as I left home and I didn't have that structure anymore, like it just fell apart like
Yeah.
completely. And um I don't know, just kind of felt really restless. I grew up in Melbourne, Australia. I'm in Melbourne, Australia now, but I have lived overseas before. And I think this kind of impulsiveness to like go and do something else and put yourself in a situation where the consequences are so high, you have to actually get into gear. Like I needed that. And that's a very ADHD thing as well. It's kind of like you need someone to like light a fire under you. You need the consequences to be really high for you to actually do something you don't want to do. And then obviously you need to be super interested in stuff. And I was fine doing stuff I was interested in. It's just all the other stuff.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And yeah, you mentioned I got diagnosed later in life. So it was around I was in my 30s when I got diagnosed, and I was in corporate life. So I run my own business now with Llama Life. We're a small team of 3 people, but I used to work in big corporate, and that was okay for a while because I was challenged and I was climbing the corporate ladder, and um, it still took me a while to figure out like what I wanted to do within a large organization, but I kind of got there, and I ended up in the innovation team, which really worked for me because I was working on new things. But I I did sort of hit like a ceiling at some point and got I guess my learning curve kind of just flattened out and it wasn't as interesting.
Yeah.
But I was really lucky because the person sitting next to me, he has ADHD, and I was just chatting to him one day about like how I was really struggling to do stuff at work, and yeah, just doing basic stuff like timesheets was really difficult for me, and administrative stuff. And he actually said to me, "Oh, I think you might have ADHD. Like maybe you want to look into that." And it had never crossed my mind. Like it had never even entered like was a possibility for me. And I think I just had a massive misconception of what ADHD, is. I used to think it was, just like everyone else, like young boys being super hyperactive and running around and being disruptive. And then I realized that was kind of me, but just in a different way. Like I'm very restless and kind of hyperactive in my head. And that manifested in different ways. Like I'd used to get up at work a lot, get out of my
Right.
seat,
Yeah.
walk around, make a cup of coffee, still get my work done, but it was noticed by people. Like I actually got told, like, stop getting out of your seat. You're like disrupting people.
But I think
You,
that's why I've said this a billion times on here, but that that's the difference where the boys were like destroying the classroom in school
mm, yeah.
and the girls were staring out the window.
Oh my gosh, I was the biggest daydreamer.
Yeah.
I used to love doing
Mhm.
like long car rides because I could daydream. I
Yeah.
could look out, this is when I was younger, so I'm not driving, but I could just sit in the back seat, look out the window, and just daydream for hours. And I don't even know, like just I used to recall movies in my head, like
Hmm.
just think about and just sort of imagine I was in it, and I don't know, just very, yeah, very sort of daydreamy. And yeah, so my colleague has ADHD, and he said look into it. So then I get on Google, I go online and I'm Googling ADHD, and I'm like, I just had this massive, I had this moment. Oh my God, like this is so me, every single
Mm.
thing, kind of more the inattentive side. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, this is like, I don't know, it was a really interesting moment because exciting, but also like, what am I going to do kind of thing moment. It's like a clash of emotions. I was really excited to kind of have an explanation of what was going on, but I was also really concerned because I was like, I don't know, what am I going to do about this? And, is there some stigma around it? So he said to go speak to his psychiatrist, which I did. And luckily that psychiatrist was just around the corner from work. So it, it was a big deal, but it wasn't as hard for me because he goes, here's the number, just call this person. It go on your lunch break. It's like just around the corner.
Yeah.
So that reduced the friction. Because I think that friction of even just getting diagnosed is a challenge in itself. It just seems such a big task, like so
Well, I think
overwhelming to go do it.
ADHD is all about avoiding friction.
Yeah, yeah. And things that you don't want to do, right? Like
Yeah. And
yeah,
then the
yeah,
the littlest thing that gets in the way of the thing that we need to do is the friction.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then we're like, okay, yeah, that there's a bunch of analogies about it, but I
Yeah,
know for me, it's that friction of just getting getting started on something, or
yeah.
you do something and then you realize you have to do it over, and that's like massive friction. So,
Mm, mm-hmm,
so
mm-hmm.
did you take
Yeah.
um did you take um the the career you were in, was that aligned with starting Llama Life? Was it helpful, or did you do a complete 180?
Um, I think both. It is very helpful and I also did a 180. So the career that I was in was advertising and branding,
Hmm.
and a little bit of marketing as well, but more sort of the advertising branding side. And that's really helped in terms of creating a business. I think there's so many businesses out there. If you want to stand out, branding can be a differentiator, and making everything, the messaging being very consistent and cohesive. So that's definitely helped. And I also learned a lot of skills, I think, just in corporate, dealing with people,
Yeah.
a little bit of politics, that kind of thing. But I don't regret my time there at all. Like I think I learned a lot, and it is helpful. But it was a 180 because I started my own business. I went into tech. I've always loved tech. I'm
Yeah.
very technical as a person, but I just never learned to code or program. So that was one thing I did. I was like, okay, well, and this is pretty recent. This is kind of when COVID hit, like peak COVID, when everybody was in lockdown. Everyone's learning a new skill. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to learn how to code now. And so I just sat there and spent like 5 hours a day watching YouTube videos, trying to figure out how to code. And, you can learn a lot in theory, but I was like, okay, well, maybe I should put this theory into practice and let me make something that I want to use. And, like you said in your introduction, like there's so many different tools out there, and I've used them all. I've just I'm going through the app store, just downloading things that I'm trying to make them work for how my brain works. And I was like, you know what? Why don't I just try and build my own? Because now I'm learning, and what better way to put it into practice? So I started building Llama Life, the very first version just for me. And it wasn't available at all. It was just literally, it was just for me. And I put it on Twitter, and people's like I did a little video of what it was, very very basic version, and people were like, straight away someone said, oh, what is this, where can I get this? And I was like, oh no, it's just like a small project I'm doing, it's just for me, I'm just learning how to code. But then more people started going, oh, where can I get this? And so I thought, well, it's still learning, so I was like, okay, I'll release it, I'll put it up there. I'll add like sort of more features to it. I'll add sort of payments to it. And all of that in my head was more just like, well, I'm just learning how to do it. And I think that took the pressure off
Hmm.
significantly.
Yeah.
It was more like a little natural progression of things. And yeah, now we're a small business of three. And It's the best job in the world for me because I get to do what I love doing, which is the coding, and I do design as well. And I'm very into like products, like how products should
Yeah.
work and little design details. And I didn't mention at the beginning, but Llama Life's very fun and playful. Like we have a lot of colors and color themes and emoji that you can apply. And all of that is to do something very specific. It's to help it feel less overwhelming because we don't need more overwhelm in our life, especially when we're trying to do all these little small tasks that we don't want to do. And I just love the design details. So I get
Yeah.
to do all of that stuff. Um, and that sounds great. But there's obviously stuff that I don't want to do as well. Like there's a lot of business stuff that you have to do as an entrepreneur and someone who runs their own business. And I'm sure you can relate to some of this,
Of
but
course. Yeah. Yeah.
there's a lot of admin and stuff that you have to do. There's a lot of like, I don't know, just making sure you're compliant and all that stuff. And I don't really like doing that, but it's part of it. So you got to take the good with the bad. But overall, I feel very lucky to be doing what I'm doing and with some awesome people as well. So it's just, yeah,
Well, I think that makes doing the stuff you don't want to do a little more, you know, uh, you can deal with
tolerable.
it. Yeah, tolerable. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the word
yeah.
I'm looking for. Yeah. So,
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
so, so your average, and I don't even know if there's an average to-do list because I've seen everything like from paper to people using, you know, uh, Office or Google Suite or like I
Hmm.
said, piece of paper or Excel spreadsheet but generally speaking, because I'm sure you had to kind of go through some of this stuff to develop the right mix of functionality.
Hmm.
But what's wrong with your average to-do list? And
Yeah.
maybe you kind of went through this exercise when you were beginning, but why why does like people's average to-do list, what's wrong with it? Why is it ineffective?
Yeah. So for me, I think that the average to-do list is all about making lists. So it's good if you want to just add something to your list, but we're all about getting through that list, which is a subtle difference. Like, yeah, you can make a list on Llama Life, but we're focused, the whole product and all the features around it are focused on actually helping you work through that list, which is like a big challenge that I have. Like work through a routine or work through a list, and that's what the timers are for. Like it's meant to help you focus on that one thing at a time. If you get bored with looking at the list, like you can put a color theme, and that's meant to give like a little bit of dopamine to your brain to go, okay, I actually want to spend time in this app. I want to work on this list. When you hit complete on a task, you get confetti all over the screen, and that's meant to help you get some reward or satisfaction. And I think, that's the big thing that's missing. It's like a lot of the other tools just help you make the list. We don't need more tools to make lists. There are so many. We need more tools to help you focus and work through that list and give you variety at the same time. Like we keep the core concept the same, which is the timers and telling you your total this time and your
Yeah.
projected end time, but we try and put variety within that. So you can add the color themes, you can put emoji on each task. Um, you can set different times that work for you. You can create preset lists as well. So preset lists they're like templates. So if you have a routine that you do every day, you don't want to create it every day. So you just save it as a preset and you can just
Hmm.
load it with the click of a button. But the whole focus is about getting through something, getting through a list, getting through a routine, and getting through your day in a way that's not stressful. Like you want to get through it and still feel pretty calm about things. And that's a big thing because you can have two people with the same list who both get through it, but the other person might get through really calmly, and I might get through and I'm super stressed. Like it might take a lot more effort for me to get through. And that's kind of the story of my life with ADHD. It's like, hey, I got through that. I got through school. I got through corporate life. I did well, but it took a lot of effort. And I'm saying effort mentally, not so much physically, but sort of this mental effort because like my brain just wasn't quite right for that.
But I think you know, we've used this age-old phrase, time management,
Mm,
but I have in recent years, and I know other people are starting to talk this way too, but it's also about energy management. Like
Yeah,
just because I
yeah,
blocked out a time at 9 o'clock at night to write a bunch of blog posts doesn't mean it's going to happen because I
yep.
blocked it out because I'm brain dead by then, you know? So
Yeah, yeah.
have you thought about that in terms of how to um how how to kind of support the user in
Hmm.
terms of that energy? Because I can I can
Yeah.
kick ass from like 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Then after that,
Hmm.
I have to get a little more strategic in the
Yep.
types of things I'm going to do based on my ability to actually put energy behind it. If that
Yeah.
question makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. Like I love what you just said. Oh, sorry, oh my gosh, my standing desk. This is such an ADHD thing. My standing desk just activated and it went down. Give me 1 second.
I'll
Uh,
tell people we rarely edit here, so
yeah,
so you're
I
getting
don't
a
mind.
glimpse
I don't
into
mind.
Marie's office life.
Yeah, I don't mind at all. I mean, like that's just natural, right? Like this stuff happens. That's all part of it. I love what you just said about the energy management. I 100% agree. Like it's not just about the time management. I often think about it as sort of attention management, but I like the energy management angle and emotional management. You know, that's actually that's actually sort of the next version of Llama Life. That's kind of where we're headed. So right now we think of it as more like attention management. We're helping people focus their attention on a task, do one thing at a time, kind of single tasking, not multitasking. But what you've mentioned is that the energy, sort of the the emotional side of things. And to do that, we're actually trying to get smarter with the app. So this isn't available right now, but because we can see, like, okay, well, you've set a task for this amount of time, and maybe you do really well at completing 5 minute tasks. The next version of the app is all about being smarter. So we can start to see that, okay, well, you're really good at 5 minute tasks, you're really good at 10, and maybe we can start to recommend some of that stuff. Or maybe you're very active at the start of the day or the end of the day and more successful at a different time, and just become a little bit smarter in terms of what we're recommending or what we're sort of reporting back to you in terms of like, hey, you do really well in the mornings, like maybe schedule these kinds of tasks then.
Yeah.
So the next phase of it is a little bit more, I guess, being more smart, like with what we know, how you use it, and also recommending more content. So we don't have content in the app at the
Mm.
moment. And by content I mean, if you think about something like a meditation app, um, sometimes or often in a meditation app, you'll also have like content, like
Yeah.
telling you how to do something or
Hmm.
teaching you something. We don't have that yet, but that will be the next stage of how to sort of manage your emotional state. And like you said, like maybe sometimes you're just better at different times of the day. And maybe sometimes you're like trying to do a task for an hour and you're not getting anywhere and you should just stop. That's one of my biggest issues. Like sometimes I know I'm not getting anywhere, but I really know I have to do something and I just
No,
keep
and that's where that
going.
and I think
Yeah.
that's where that energy comes in.
Yeah, exactly.
It's how we schedule things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like I can tell you that if I have no meetings like one day, there's this
Mhm.
like there's a ton of runway, and I just get off to a good start in the morning. I mean, I could get 2 weeks worth of work done in an
Oh my
entire
gosh.
day.
Yeah.
But that it's just like
Yeah, yeah.
it's managing the energy, it's managing the commitments. It's like you said, that emotional thing, like there's really nothing in my way today until like dinner time. So
Yeah.
I can go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
developing some type of cadence to your week, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like I'm kind of picturing this graph where you've got like time on the bottom on the x-axis, and then on the y-axis is more like your energy. And my graph is like up and down, up and down, up and down, because I kind of have these bursts where I'm like really focused on something, like the hyper focus, and then I get stuck in that, or I'm like nothing. And one of my goals is to, yeah, can I be more steady, like throughout the day? yeah, there's going to be a few ups and downs, but can I get this graph to be more calm
Yeah.
and calm and focused and even in terms of the energy management throughout the day versus kind of these ups and downs? And it's never going to be perfect, but I think a lot of this is like a self-awareness thing. Like, how are you feeling right now? Like, be conscious of how you're feeling and
Yeah.
try and work with that a little bit. And if it's not working, maybe just stop for take a break. Like, that's one of the hardest things for me is just
No,
take a
and I think we
break.
need, yeah, I mean, we need to protect ourselves. There are some,
Yes.
there are,
Yeah. It's never going to be
it,
perfect, but
and at some point we got to say, because I know the opposite too, where I sometimes will not start something because I know I probably don't have enough time to finish it, or I will
yeah.
get interrupted. And that is one of the most frustrating things I can go through. So I protect myself from pissing myself off.
Yeah.
Quite
Yeah. I love
frankly.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. We need to do more of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
It's, yeah.
if, as we wrap up, if you had, I won't say the magic wand of productivity, but and I know obviously you put your heart and soul and probably a few bucks into the Llama Life,
Yeah.
but if you had like one go-to type of productivity uh, technique or habit
Mhm.
or skill you've built, one thing that has made the most impact in your life, what would that be?
Definitely just single tasking.
Mm,
So just focusing on one thing at a time is very powerful for me because it creates and combining that with the timer, they go hand in hand to me because when you set the timer, it's about just focusing on that task for that time period that you're kind of locking in. And it's not, it's not a stopwatch. So it's not open ended, it's closed. It's like 5 minutes on this one thing. That's made the biggest difference to me because somehow it creates mental space in my head to go, all right, I am just doing this one thing. And I feel less stressed when I'm like, I'm just going to do this one thing. And you don't need to, I'm sort of giving myself permission. It's like, I'm just giving myself permission to do this one thing and nothing else. And you don't have to worry about the other stuff. Just do this one thing in this 5 minutes, and then we'll move on to the next thing.
yeah,
So I think that's been the most powerful for me because, yeah, single tasking with a timer, focusing on that one thing at a time, it just creates the space for me to do it. And I feel less stressed. Um, it isn't perfect. So sometimes when we talk about these things, it's like, oh, yeah, that works every single time. It doesn't work every single time,
yeah, oh yeah,
right? That's just reality. That's life. But I try and do it, and that's the most important thing. And I know that it can work for me, and so that's the thing I'm always trying to do. And some days are better than others. Some days I'm like I really like got through that routine really well, and other days I go off it. But that's how it is. And like you said earlier, I'm trying not to beat myself up too much about it. I'm trying to protect myself in some way, and go, oh, well, okay, that's okay. Like today didn't go that well. That's okay. Like let's try again tomorrow.
yeah. Then and you're right. Then and it's all about giving yourself a little bit of grace when it comes down to that.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, cool. All right. So where can people find you?
I'm very active on Twitter. So on Twitter at llama.life.co. Oh, sorry, Llama Life Co. Just one word, Llama Life Co. on
Mm-hmm.
Twitter. And the website is llamalife.co. So it's not .com, it's .co. And you can find me on Twitter as well. I'm at 3 Hour Coffee, spelled out 3 Hour Coffee on Twitter.
Cool. All right. We will have that for people so they can just click on it. So cool. Well, thanks for the great discussion. And hopefully you'll come back and we can tackle some other issues.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
Cool. All right.